What's up, guys? Frosty Aussie here today for another Frosty Features. Continuing on our trend to cover the Annihilators, we get to retroactively do Thanos. Thanos has been in the game for a very long time. We get new Thanos Endgame for the Annihilators, but because Frosty wasn't around for a Black Order originally, I get to turn around and do Thanos finally, which is super exciting because Thanos is super cool. I already know a crap ton about the character. He's involved in so many just influential arcs throughout the Marvel Universe. So, I'm excited to talk about him. If you haven't been to a Frosty feature before, what this is a comic book background on the tunes that you use in Marvel Strike Force, and I am your not-so-humble guide. So, with that, let's begin. According to Scopely, Thanos Endgame. So what this is we read the blog post description. That is the background that Scopely gives for the character, and we rate it at the end of the feature. So Thanos Endgame. 5 years after Thanos snapped away half of all life in the universe, the Avengers went back in time to retrieve the Infinity Stones and restore the universe as it once was. But the pre-snap version of Thanos discovered their intentions and traveled to the Avengers' present time. Thanos Endgame may not have the Infinity Gauntlet, but he's armed with a new plan of destroying the entire universe. So we'll rate that at the end. Obviously, so to kick this off, 100%, just lay it out there. Because the MCU has made this confusing for a reason. We stick to Marvel 616 canon here on Frosty Features. Marvel 616 canon is not the Marvel Cinematic Universe, no matter what the Marvel Cinematic Universe states. Marvel Cinematic Universe is not the central pillar of comic book characters. Comic books are. So, hard clarification with Thanos, right? We're going to be talking about the history of Thanos from Marvel 616. This would be more aligned with the Black Order Thanos, only for the fact that Thanos Endgame is from the MCU, which is, so, main Marvel continuity, Earth 616, that is the main comic book continuity. MCU likes to pretend that it is Earth 616. It is not. It's claimed it in a few movies now. It is not. It is confirmed from the comics to be 159999, right? That is the canon, right? So these are different. Thanos Endgame is from 159999. We do comic books here, so essentially I'm just covering them both. 159999. No matter what other content creators say, no matter how it works, Thanos Endgame from the MCU is based on the Marvel 616 Thanos. That's how a multiverse works. It doesn't matter what other logic you have. It's been bothering me so much, and I'm just going to keep bringing it up in Frosty Features. So, Thanos Endgame is based on Thanos from 616, which is the Black Order Thanos that we supposedly have in the game. We are talking about that. It still counts as information that can be considered for any version of Thanos throughout the multiverse. That's how multiverses work. Name, Thanos. That is his name. First appearance, Iron Man number 55, all the way back in 1972. Powers and abilities. So, Thanos is such an influential character. His powers sort of range heavily on what he's currently doing. So, as in current comics, he's the Avatar of Death. He operates as essentially Death's embodiment. He, very well known as Thanos' love affair with Death. And there's also a love triangle with Deadpool, Death, and Thanos. But with his thing of Death, essentially Thanos' main goal in life through the majority of his comic book history, his goal is to please Lady Death, right? Thanos in 159999 is looking to balance the universe, but we don't get a reason why, because Death doesn't exist in that plane, but he's still looking to balance the universe. We're going to talk about him balancing the universe in the comics. His motivation to do so in the comics is to please Lady Death. He essentially wants to be by her side. He wants to be equals with her and what have you, so he thinks in stacking up this incredibly high body count will appease her or impress her in some kind of way. So he's the Avatar of Death, superhuman in every way, even beyond that, even to the point his strength often outranks that of Hulk's, which Hulk has infinitely scaling strength. So with Thanos, it's safe to assume that he has infinitely scaling strength as well, to some extent, but maybe it increases faster than the Hulk. But we see Thanos overpower the Hulk. Can he overpower the Hulk in every form of the Hulk? Probably not. There's a pretty good chance like demonic Hulk, like the true like Green Door Hulk could take Thanos, but it's really hard to say, at least in hand-to-hand. Yeah, it is very hard to say as far as that's concerned. Death augments. Another big thing with Thanos is every time he dies, and we're going to talk about death a lot in this one because it's Thanos. Every time he dies, he gets brought back to life. He is denied at death's door. He's born of Eternals. Eternals also are reborn immediately when they die, but not him. He is reborn immediately because death refuses to accept him in her like plane, so he can't die. But she also like once again, it's kind of like an on again and off again thing with death. So one of the abilities she's kind of bestowed upon him is every time he revives, he's a little bit stronger, which is why he's especially when you get like older Thanos and stuff like that, you get these I want to say the Thani, plural Thanos. The Thani get so much stronger as they die and come back, right? Which would be a cool mechanic to see in Marvel Strike Force, right? You get like a if in the event like maybe he doesn't have revive in his kit, but in the event that you like use him with Dorm or something and he revives, he revives with a couple buffs. It'd be kind of sick and comic book accurate. Anyway, also he's immortal by his eternal heritage. He's like immortal to the point where the only way for him to die would be to be killed. He can't get sick, he doesn't age, things like that, but he can be killed, but once again death denies him, so he comes back immediately. Alias is the Mad Titan, probably the most prominent alias for Thanos, the Prime Eternal being like the strongest of the Eternals, and then Dione, so that is actually the name he was supposed to receive before he was born, and once he was born, he was given the moniker of Thanos. We'll talk about his birth and stuff as we move forward. Affiliations: Black Order, obviously, Eternals, Infinity Watch, and I put others. Another really notable one in the context of Marvel Strike Force is he was a part of the Cabal, for sure. Not the original Cabal, but he ended up getting brought in. Yeah, so very affiliated individual. Different versions of Thanos also have played in the realm of different affiliations, but ultimately he's the bad guy until the universe is going to end in a way he doesn't like, and then he becomes the good guy. Background: Titanian Eternal. So he is born of Eternals, the Eternals residing on Earth at the time, I believe, but no, that's wrong. He was born on Titan. His parents were exiled essentially, and he grew up on Titan in this kind of rebuilt civilization they made. I'll explain that in the notable events. But yes, he is one of the Eternals. You could technically give him an Eternal tag. The thing is he's not necessarily welcome among all of his people. Who died? Can't be a superhero, supervillain without somebody dying. In Thanos' case, a crap ton of people. A lot of them. Most notably, to make Thanos into Thanos, he kills his parents. That's important, but his parents are eternal, so they revive. His parents, big ones. And then when he's a kid, 3 of his friends, essentially he's like this big he has this point where he's like a pacifist, and his friends want to explore a cave, and they're like, oh, it's really dangerous, and they're like, it's fine, and there's a cave-in situation, and all these like little beasts are in there, and Thanos can kill the beast, but he chooses not to, and then he watches his friends die, and then he leaves, and then some little girl's like, you need to go kill all the beasts in there, and then he kills them all, and he realizes that life's sort of meaningless, and he becomes the psychopath that we all know and love from there. So at least those 5 people, but also the due to like not only retcons, but also if you watch Frosty Future's Cosmic Ghost Rider, we talk about Baby Thanos. So that version of Baby Thanos, there's legitimately team after team after team of Guardians of the Galaxy, different versions of the Guardians of the Galaxy and the Avengers that gets annihilated just so Frank Castle, a Ghost Rider, Cosmic Ghost Rider, can make sure that Baby Thanos exists. So usually there's a really easy way to define it. There's 2 ways up until this point. There's 2 ways to define who died in Frosty Features. There's usually either a person or a small group of people, or I have to kind of justify it in a weird way to nobody being involved. in Thanos' situation, there's so many people that had to die to get him where he is because people try to go back in time and murk baby Thanos. It's same with Apocalypse. People go back in time and try to murk baby Apocalypse, and people die along the way there too. And then also people need to die to make him evil as they're going through or whatever. Or maybe it's nature, we don't know. But ultimately, in the case of Thanos, who died? Just a lot of people. Just a lot of them. Purple skin. So, as far as the Eternals are concerned, they look human. They are human. With the Eternals, Thanos isn't technically supposed to exist just by the way of the Eternals work. They can't reproduce. So in his reproduction and in him being, he gets mixed in with deviant genes. So deviants are like kind of this evil offshoot monster types of the Eternals. They're featured in the Eternals movie for what it's worth. But he has some deviant DNA, which makes his skin turn purple and actually makes him resemble. He has essentially the strength, actually is more, but his strength is more similar to that of the Eternals, because the Eternals can murk multiple deviants at a time. So essentially, in the event that you wanted to call him a deviant, he'd be the most powerful deviant. But he's not. He's more Eternal than deviant. He just looks more like a deviant than an Eternal, which automatically put him at odds with a lot of, like as a kid, put him at odds with a lot of the people he would be hanging out with and things like that, which kind of led him to more of a solitary kind of lifestyle situation, which, you know, he kind of digs anyway. And once again, there's a lot of different, because we're going to talk about Thanos Rises. There's actually more than one, and there's a lot of different ways that he's been brought up, but that's what happens when you have a cyclical time cycle, right? So all of them are important, and all of them make sense if you just kind of look at them from a broad spectrum, but it's confusing, but it makes sense, I promise. Brotherly love. I wanted to find something. Thanos is a character I know an awful lot about, and, you know, if you've been watching Frosty Features, that they, like, if I say I know a lot about a character, I mean it. Thanos is a character I know a lot about, and so I kind of went out of my way to look up something I didn't know about Thanos. So, and honestly, to be completely transparent, it's a fun fact in the Marvel trivia of the fandom page. Because I was trying to find something new, because everything I'm talking about today is stuff that I legitimately have in my comic collection. So, brotherly love. Thanos' brother is Eros, also known as Star Fox. He shows up for 5 seconds at the end of the Eternals movie. It's Harry Styles for some reason. But anyway, his brother, essentially, they're diametrically opposed in every way. Thanos' parents have him, and they're like, that was awful. Let's try to figure out if we can make a better one. And then they make the opposite of Thanos. So, instead of a solitary, psychotic, crazy person, we have a do-gooder women's. You know, Thanos can't get the girl, but a do-gooder women killer, lady killer, right? Like a ladies' man, is Eros. But an interesting thing I didn't know. These are things I knew. The interesting thing that I did not know is apparently once every like cosmic year, no matter how opposed they are, because they pretty much always, Eros sometimes will side with Thanos, but for the most part they are very opposed. Eros isn't about killing up like mass genocide on a universal scale. So when they're not opposed, they set a day aside a year to just kind of meet up with each other and like exchange gifts and pleasantries or whatever, and like have a day where they can just be brothers. Right? And also keep in mind they're both immortal, because Eros is able to integrate with the Great Machine, is the thing that makes the Earth-bound Eternals revive. So if they die, they automatically get rebirthed in the Great Machine. Thanos was unable to integrate with it. Eros did, so he's effectively immortal because of the Eternals way. Thanos is immortal because of the stuff I've talked about with death. But no matter what, they always drop things for a day, and they always have this day of like brotherly companionship, which I just thought was so cool. It's neat, and it's, you know, they value that relationship to some extent. And honestly, that's probably the only relationship he values as far as the Eternals are concerned. Because he very much, especially in the early days of Thanos, he spends a lot of his time just killing them. Destroying places and things, trying to take over. Relationship. So we've got Alar. Relationship. We have Alar, and then we have Susan, who is his parents. Both are Eternals. Alar is better known as the mentor. Eros is his brother. That's who I was talking about. Star Fox. Thane and Rot are his confirmed children. Thane being probably the most prominent one. Gamora being his most prominent daughter, is a foster daughter. Nebula is also in the MCU, is a foster daughter, but in the comic books, it either is his foster daughter or granddaughter. It's a little bit fuzzy, but ultimately there is some sort of lineage there where he does claim her as family one way or the other. It's just a little bit different than the MCU. But yes, the Gamora stuff still pertains in the MCU, or excuse me, in the comics as it does in the MCU, really big. And actually, his relationship with Nebula is very important when you actually look at the actual Infinity Gauntlet saga. So there's that. Notable events. Thanos Rising. This is the one we've been kind of alluding to this whole time. So Thanos Rising, essentially, there's more than one version of this. One details how Thanos. It's like a one shot. I got it when it came out. It came out like 2020, 2021. Thanos Rising is a one-shot about how Thanos was created, because Eternals aren't supposed to be able to reproduce. So it's about how doing the nasty finally made the Thanos. Which, as weird as it sounds, is actually a really good read, especially if you're just just getting into comics and you've got an idea of who Thanos is from the MCU. And the Thanos Rising that I'm talking about has a really cool thing. But there's also a second version of Thanos Rising that explains the bit about what I was talking about with the cave and those kids, right? We're going to talk about how he was, how he came to be. Chicka chicka pow wow. We're going to talk about a story about Thanos that actually does not have Thanos in it all that much, because it doesn't end with him being born, but the whole story is leading up to his birth. But it was a big deal, right? So we've got the Eternals. In MSF, we've only got Icarus and Cersei, and they're based off their movie counterparts. But ultimately, the Eternals are, if we're looking at cosmic scale as far as the Eternals are considered, you have the Celestials. You've got your Galactus kind of level people, the ones that kind of Grandmaster. We've got the Collector, people like that. Even on the small end, we've got like Ego. These are the people you might recognize from the MCU. Ultimately, they're low-level gods, and the Celestials then make the Eternals. So in the timeline of the cosmos, Eternal come after the Celestials. So these are extremely powerful immortal beings that reside heavily on Earth, or on a moon, or on Titan or whatever. They move around a little bit, but ultimately this big group, they've got this thing called the Great Machine. If they die, they automatically are reborn in the Great Machine. They don't age, they can't reproduce. They're effectively robots, right? But they're super powered, every single one of them. So with that, they were residing on Titan. So as far as like Marvel continuity goes, it's 200,000 years before what modern Marvel continuity takes place in. So 200,000 years before that, they have something called the Great Titanian Schism. So ultimately, a war breaks out because Alar is like, yo, I'm interested. Alar is a scientist, right? That's important to know. So he's one of the ones that making all these technical, one of the people besides like Faustus and a few others, making technological advancements in things for the Eternals, kind of pushing them forward because they're also very advanced as far as technology goes, also with their powers kind of supplementing it. Anyway, Alar is like, dude, wouldn't it be kind of cool if we like could have more than the amount that there are of us? Because essentially the Celestials created them, and however many they created are there, and they always get reborn. So there's always the same amount. And they're like, what if we are able to make stronger versions of us by reproducing with people of other species, or or if we could do it with each other, maybe it'd be even more powerful. And this comes out, and then his quote unquote brother, which that's a whole thing too, because the Eternals don't actually, they have a family structure that they talk about, but they have a family structure that they talk about, but it's assigned, right? So none of them are, by our standards of what a family is, none of them are actually related. They're like I said, they're constructs, more or less. They're pretty much robots. So they, as people of sentient nature, they select who their brothers are, their mother, etc. So in this situation, Alar, his brother Zoraz, that's this guy we see right here. He's like, yeah, you shouldn't do that. That could mean disaster for the cosmos. This isn't gonna happen. And Alar is like, nah, I think we should do it. And essentially 2 factions are created, and it's a war of Eternals where they are fighting and they destroy their home planet of Titan. Once again, so the way, and I don't want to get too much into the Eternals lore, ultimately this happens a lot. Very often with their tech and stuff like that, very often do Eternals get into wars with each other, and then essentially a result comes out, it is written down, and then all of them get their memory wiped and they go on. Because once again, if you're in a war with people who, when they die, they just come right back, you know, that's it's really not as big a deal as it is as a war with us, even though they're mega powerful, right? So for this the Titanium Schism, they destroy Titan hard. And it's horrible, and it goes on for a very long time. And then their prescribed their chosen mother shows up, and she's like, "Hey, y'all need to stop. I'm gonna make the choice on who wins this, and I think that Alar has a point. It could be very beneficial if we could figure this out, but we don't need to do it on a massive scale. It can only be done on a small scale. So I'm actually going to side with Zoraz, and this is what's going to happen. Alar, you're banished. Get the F out of here. We're not going to support this, but you are allowed, as you're banished, you're allowed to choose one of the other banished Eternals, because they get banished for random things like rebelling, what have you. You can choose another Eternal, and you can do this experiment yourself. And Alar's like, cool, I can deal with this. So he goes off to find, specifically he seeks out Susan first, who is the only remaining, as being banned, they don't come back in the Great Machine. It's a whole thing. He seeks out Suzanne, and she's the only one remaining of her kind of situation. She's like, what, you come all this way to seduce me? And he was like, absolutely, I did. So with that, he starts doing experiments, and they start doing trying to have a kid, and it's just not happening. And eventually he's approached by Kronos being the prescribed father. So the mother and the father are among first gen of Eternals. They're like the strongest beings, probably the closest thing an Eternal gets to being a Celestial. So because of these enhanced powers, even versus the other Eternals, they have abilities kind of beyond that of the other Eternals. So in this, Kronos approaches him, and he's like, hey, I heard you're trying to do this thing. I'll tell you what, I'll give you the ability to reproduce if you get married first, because obviously a very specific culture is writing this, and you can't be married you can't have children out of wedlock, even though we're an alien race and marriage hasn't brought up until just now. And so Alar's like, okay, I guess we can do that. So he and Suzanne are married, and therefore they're allowed to conceive a child. So with that, that is we have the couple of comic panels where Suzanne is pregnant, and she's excited for the baby, what have you, and she wants to name it Doran, and everything's super excited. But then she has the baby, sees its purple wrinkled face, and she is automatically driven mad by the horror and evil, and that is kind of like coming off the kid. And she's like, oh my god, we put something super evil into the universe. And so she goes insane, and Thanos is raised for a short period of time, and then eventually he goes and kills his mother, who is then reborn on Earth. So once again, they were on a shattered Titan. Alar and Susan rebuilt Titan to be like a colony of like different races and a couple of Eternals, and namely just did like different races and stuff. And they have Eros, and there's a favorite son thing that kind of goes on, but his mom goes mad and is committed, and then Thanos goes and kills her. She's reborn on Earth, and then he does the same. He tracks down Alar and kills Alar once he's big enough, once he's grown, right? So one of the things following that, so Suzanne is killed. She's reborn in the Great Machine. The Eternals essentially pull her out, and they're like, all right, you're arrested. You're going to Eternal's prison, which is being locked away essentially forever. And then after Alara is killed by Thanos and he wakes up, this is the coolest part. This one part is why I want to talk about Thanos Rising. I just think it's crazy. They grab Alara and they're like, all right, this is all your fault. Thanos is a freaking menace. It's all on you. You are going into this prison. And Alara's like, yeah, I probably deserve it. And so he gets put in this room and he's told, all right, every time Thanos kills somebody, a little bitty light will like a little bitty light like dot will populate in the room. And every time he kills a person, so you know how many people you've killed because of your experiment, right? And Alara's like, okay, well that'll be okay. It'll be fine. And very quickly, within a couple of years, the entire room is lit up, and shortly thereafter, it is so bright in the room that it burns out Alara's eyes, and he's permanently scarred by the burns on his face, just from the death and destruction that Thanos kills by himself. And I just think that's such a freaking cool. It's a cool image and it's a cool concept. That's Thanos Rising. Moving on, Thanos Quest. For those of you who have been long-time Frosty Features fans, I talk about Thanos Quest all the time. I said it's one of the best. It's one of the best like runs of Thanos ever. So this is like definitely the cool time to talk about it. So it's one of the times Thanos is getting together the Infinity Gems. So the Infinity Stones, right? So the way this works in the MCU, they are called the Infinity Stones. In the comics, they're called Infinity Gems, and before that, they're the Soul Gems. So originally, he gets the 6 Soul Gems together, and he makes a giant Soul Gem, and he tries to capture everybody in it. Ultimately, he realizes he gets killed, and death brings him back to life, and he learns by looking into the Infinity Well, which is kind of like ultimate cosmic, like, oh, this is like your destiny. So he figures out what the actual power of the Soul Gems are, and at this point he realizes he's misnamed them as Soul Gems and they are actually Infinity Gems. And so what he's trying to do, this is the story leading up to the Snap storyline in Marvel Comics is called the Infinity Gauntlet. So Thanos Quest is leading up to that. So this is essentially how he gets all 6 stones. So in the MCU, we see him kind of, he already has a couple stones, and then he in Infinity War, he's grabbing the last ones. So in Thanos Quest, this is how he gets the stones in the comics to for the first time putting on his glove, right? So it actually to do the snap. So Thanos Quest is everything leading up to that. So ultimately looks into the Infinity Well, figures out they're the Infinity Gems, and he's decided to go get them. After he lost them from putting together the giant Soul Gem, they were kind of shot out to these various celestial beings to kind of protect them. So there are 6 of them, so he starts his quest in retrieving all of these different things. So starting off, he decides the easiest one to get, because obviously another thing to keep in consideration. So this isn't just him going around and punching a lot of things. That's kind of what I love about it. It very much is his tactical mind. You get to see how his thought process works. So essentially, he plans this out, and because he knows what the stones can do, right? So he plans this out so he gets these at certain times so that he's stronger, or he can use the power of the gems to make, because ultimately the people that have the gems, base level Thanos cannot take them, and he knows it. So what he does is he makes this like crazy strategic plan to get all of these gems, because baseline Thanos can't, but Thanos with Infinity Gems can take them out. So first thing he goes for is In-Betweener. The In-Betweener is imprisoned at the Nexus of Realities. This is a celestial being that lives in between realities at all times. He is imprisoned at the center, and he's sitting there in prison, and he does have the Soul Gem. So Thanos is like, listen, bro, I'll let you out of your prison if you give me the Soul Gem, and everything will be okay. And so ultimately, just by that alone, the In-Betweener is like, okay. So he releases the In-Betweener, and the In-Betweener gives him the Soul Gem, and he's like, thanks. And then with the Soul Gem, he steals the soul of the In-Betweener and kills him. Done and done, right? So he's got one Infinity Gem, and then he moves on, and he's like, okay, from here, I'm gonna go. Which this is, if I remember correctly in the story, this is the only one, this is the step he's worried about. So he's deciding he's going to go get the power gem from the champion. And the champion is effectively very similar to like Superman, more or less. in strength, like actually infinite scaling strength, speed, durability, etc. But he can't fly. It's a very important part of what happens. So Thanos, he travels, especially at this point, he travels the spaces on his spaceship, and so he goes to the planet where the champion is residing, and you know, tries to best the champion in physical combat. And the way that this works is he knows he can't beat the champion. Now, not that the champion's gonna beat him, but essentially he's kind of under the impression that they're gonna be so evenly matched that the fight would never end. So his plan was not to fight and defeat the champion. His plan was to fight the champion in such a way that the whole planet they are fighting on is destroyed, and that's exactly what happens. He fights the champion and the planet is decimated, and champion and him are floating in space, and the champion's like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm just sitting here with this power gem, and as strong as I am, I can't do anything about it. And Thanos is like, I got this cool spaceship situation here. If you give me the power gem, I promise I will send you to a planet. I'll get you to a planet. And the champion's like, well, it's my only option, and hands him the power gem. And using the power gem, Thanos essentially grabs him and just throws him at a planet. And so he didn't put him down nicely, but yeah, so he launches champion to a nearby planet, who like gets burnt up or whatever in the atmosphere and stuff. And he does survive, but still pretty brutal. So from there, he goes to the gardener. The story with the gardener. Once again, read this. It's so, I'm just doing little summaries, fun little summaries. The story with the gardener is freaking crazy to me. I love it so much. So the gardener is essentially this peaceful dude. He owns his own planet, and he grows this like super, it's the most beautiful, like think like the idea of Garden of Eden. It's the most beautiful, this planet is like the most beautiful, luscious garden in the universe. And it's just him sitting there with the he's sitting there with the time gem, and he uses the time gem to help like nourish the plants, things like that. And Thanos gets there, and he's just so taken aback by the beauty of the planet that he's just like, man, I don't want to kill this guy. What he all this guy cares about is his planet. He's not affecting anything else. He has no political agenda. He just built this beautiful thing. And so Thanos goes down there, and he's like, hey, like, this is all beautiful and stuff, but I'm gonna need the time gem. And the gardener's like, I can't give it to you. It's what gives all these plants life. If you take this, you end the planet. Like, we're not gonna be able to do this. And essentially it becomes a battle of wits. But the way it sort of ends up working is that as the gardener is using the time gem, Thanos uses the power gem to amplify the power of the time gem, which rapidly ages and kills the gardener. And in killing the gardener, he kills the garden on the planet. And Thanos has like a moment of like a quick little, like a single tear situation. He didn't actually have a single tear. That's actually important in the story. But he's extremely upset that he had to kill the garden. Like, he really didn't want to do it. So you get to kind of see that kind of fall through. Especially, you don't have like the heartbreaking thing like him killing Gamora in the MCU, but this is kind of the closest equivalent. From there, he calls up this one. I think this is so dirty. He calls up the collector who has one of the gems, and he said, hey, and he knows the collector doesn't know the power of the gem, and he says, hey, I will trade you one of the rarest specimens in the universe. I'll trade you a celestial child if you will trade me for the reality gem. And the collector doesn't know what he does. He's like, it's a cool rock. So he's like, yeah, let's do that. That sounds good. So he's got that set up with the collector, and what he does is he goes to the runner. So the runner has the space gem, so he's super fast. He's all over the place. He can travel through space and time kind of situation. Space. He specifically traveled through space, not time. And he goes to the runner, and he's like, all right, well, I should be able to fight the runner and beat him. But to his surprise, the runner actually decimates his ship, and the runner stops, and he essentially he's kicking the crap out of Thanos, and he stops, and he starts the monologue, more or less. He's like asking what Thanos' intentions and things are, and in response, Thanos uses the time gem and rapidly ages him essentially millions of years and turns him into an old decrepit man, and he pretty much just walks over to him and takes the space gem. And then after he takes the space gem, he uses the time gem and he de-ages the runner to the point of a baby, and he takes the baby Then he travels to the collector, trades the baby for the reality gem, and then as he's leaving, the collector's like, "Oh, thank you so much, this is amazing," and he's like, "Yeah, no problem." And since the way the Infinity Gems kind of work, once you're out of proximity, it sort of wears off. So knowing this was going to happen, after he leaves the collector, the runner ages back up to his actual age, and he ages up back to his actual age, and the collector isn't able to like maintain him, so the collector ended up getting nothing, and Thanos got the reality gem. And then finally, the only thing he needs is the mind gem. So it is held by the Grandmaster. This is the character played by Jeff Goldblum in Thor Ragnarok. So he goes to the Grandmaster, and the Grandmaster, as he likes to do, he's like, "I know you're coming for the gem. I know your aim. This is what we're going to do. We're going to play a game, and we're going to play a game for all of the gems. Whoever wins this game gets to keep all of the gems. That's the deal. Will you take it?" And Thanos is like, "All right, we'll do this. It'll be good." So they get in the game. It's a virtual reality game, and ultimately they're shooting things at each other, and they have to, ultimately it's just trying to kill each other. And at the end, Thanos is kind of lining up for a kill shot. It doesn't work. Grandmaster reveals that he was cheating. He was like, "Yo, I had to set up. Your suit's gonna kill you anyway. I win. Woohoo-hoo. I'm the best cheater in the world." The suit explodes. The Thanos dies. And turns out Thanos anticipated this. So the virtual reality version of him was actually a robot double that he used in place. And while Grandmaster is watching the robot double get killed, Thanos in the real world destroys the computer that is simulating the game and traps Grandmaster inside, leaving Thanos to be able to pick up the final mind gem, put it on his gauntlet, and, you know, he does his little snap situation. So ultimately with all that, he levels, you know, half the universe, all that stuff happens. That's what tips off the Avengers, what have you. But he goes to death, and that's how Infinity Gauntlet starts. He goes to death. This is the epitome part of Thanos' quest. He goes to death, and he's like, I've taken out half the universe for you. I've done all this for you. You know, will you be with me? Whatever. And her messenger is like, "You have surpassed death in every way, so you're actually her superior. You are not her equal. You are her superior." And she cannot. Before, she was too high to talk to Thanos. At this point, she could never speak to Thanos. She always used a messenger. She's like, "So now you're too high for her to properly speak to you. So you're still not allowed to kind of be with death because now you have risen above her station." And Thanos then kills the messenger, and he turns around, and essentially everything he's done is for nothing. He didn't get what he killed half the universe for nothing. He became this mega godlike creature, but that's not why he wanted to be. That's not what he wanted. None of that's what he wanted. He didn't get what he wants. It becomes a hollow victory, and the Thanos quest ends with him crying about like his inability to get what he wants. It's such a good story. I'm gonna bleep that out. Anyway, that is notable events for Thanos. Power level. Marvel Strike Force doesn't care about power level, but here at Frosty features we do. Now, the way that this works, if you are a multiversal threat, that means you can end all of realities at a whim. Just knock them over and be done with it. Not just your reality, but all the realities at the same time. Universal means you can end your reality, perhaps then hop on over to another reality and end that one. Cosmic means you will have power that is a threat on a planetary scale, being able to level things like planetary bodies or galaxies or solar systems with enough time. Super Soldier, nuclear means you have power equivalent to that of a nuclear bomb, leveling things like small cities or a small planetary body. Super Soldier means that you are beyond all human capabilities, leveling things like brick walls or even a city block with enough time. City level means that you are essentially a human being trained to the absolute and utter peak of human ability. And so in Marvel, this is where we have a lot of our secret agents, our mercenaries, our ninjas, things like that. Olympic level human being, essentially. And then there's Greg. Greg is the undead Asgardian that is spawned by Hela in Marvel Strike Force. And when left to his own devices, he is not worth anything. He is very, very weak. And in the event that I'm at a Dave & Buster's, and I'm playing one of those coin games, and I'm trying to get all these cards, And one of the things is I'm about to get the super rare card that's gonna complete the collection. I'm gonna get 1,000 tickets. It's gonna be a great day. And as I'm about to do it, right before I put the coin in, Greg comes by and intentionally bumps the coin machine game, and it falls down. But since I didn't have a coin in, it doesn't dispense the card, and I don't get the card. I turn around, I punch Greg in the face. Right? I theoretically, as a regular and average human being, could theoretically take Greg, because we are saying due to undead Asgardian physiology, just because I like to make the argument, Greg is equivalent to that of an average regular human being. For the instance of Thanos, Thanos is the perfect representation of power versus influence. So his power level, base level, without infinity gems, without the cosmic cube, he always is getting all these cosmic enhancements, right? His base level power is cosmic. His influence, because he's going and getting all these different things, he's getting these different items and things like that to do stuff, is multiversal in nature. Or actually universal in nature, because he affects one universe and then he moves over and he'll do other ones. He doesn't really play in destroying an entire multiverse very often. It has come up, but for the most part, he ranges from cosmic to universal. He is the perfect example of being able to level a planet at whim. So, as even demonstrated in my conversation about Thanos Quest, very solidly at this rating. According to Scopely, this one's pretty obvious. It got it twisted only for the fact that it went for the MCU version, not the comic version, and it's twisted only for the fact that the MCU versions are based off the comic versions, so that's totally fine. It is canon to the MCU. I don't care what anybody says. It's Endgame Thanos. It's Thanos from the movie. Please keep that in mind as we move forward in Marvel Strike Force. And that is Frosty Features Thanos. I hope that you all enjoyed it. I hope that you learned something or had a good time. Please let me know in the comments your favorite Thanos moments from the comics or the movies or even this game. I'd love to hear it, or if I got anything wrong, just hit me up. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe here on YouTube. Doesn't cost you anything but a couple of clicks. And as a reminder, I stream Sundays at the link above at 8 a.m. Central Standard Time, where we do Frosty Features live. I hope that you all enjoyed this. I hope that you all have a fantastic weekend. Most importantly, all, stay cool.